Hey there, welcome to the third installment of the Red Hood Cosplay Airsoft series. My name is Trail, and today we're making the Red Hood helmet. The first thing I did was create my pattern. I did this by spraying a mannequin head with spray adhesive and covering the whole thing with a plastic bag. Once I had done that, I covered the plastic bag with duct tape. This gives me a stronger surface to work with, and it's easier to see the markings that I make on there later. I created a new helmet design that would allow more airflow and breathability. Now that I had the design I wanted, I marked out my pattern pieces on the mannequin head. Once I was done with marking the design, I cut out my pieces and pulled them off of the head. Next, I used spray adhesive to glue my pieces to a sheet of thick paper. This helps the patterns lie flat and makes them a bit more durable. Then, I cut them out. Because of the sheer amount of curve in the piece for the top of the head, I cut out the paper copy and gave it a new layer of duct tape so that it would lay flat. I used my pattern to create a mock-up of the helmet, and as I thought, it turned out to be too small. To fix this, I used a similar process as I did with the chest piece, adding about 1/8 of an inch to most of the edges and adjusting in other places to make sure the pieces would fit together. Then, I cut out my new pattern pieces. Now that I had my actual pattern, I began to place the pieces on the craft foam. I used pins to make sure that they wouldn't move as I traced them out. After everything was traced, I cut out my foam pieces. All of the pieces meet directly, so all of the cuts were straight, 90-degree angles. Next, I heated my pieces and shaped them, using a wiffle ball for general curves, like the sides and top, and using my fingers for small, deep curves like the face and chin. With my pieces shaped, I moved on to the gluing. I applied a layer of contact cement to all of the edges that were part of a seam. I started at the center of the helmet and worked my way out. I went over the seams that I didn't want to be visible with Quick Seal. This fills the seams and helps disguise them after painting. I usually use 2 layers to get a smoother covering. Next, I created a piece to go along the back of the helmet. I used this as both a detail piece and also as a way to keep the seams from splitting. I used my helmet pattern to create this new piece, then traced it onto foam and cut it out. I used mainly straight cuts and a slightly angled cut for the top edge. Once I had the piece cut out, I shaped it and traced it onto the helmet. I then applied a layer of contact cement to both pieces and glued them together. As I did this, I ended up tearing the back piece apart. I continued to glue it down and came back to the tear with more contact cement and attempted to lay it flat. However, there was still an obvious rip, so I went over the area with 2 very thick layers of Quick Seal. With construction done, I moved on to painting. Just like the chest piece, I'm using Plasti-Dip as my main paint instead of exclusively as a sealant. This is ideal for my plan to use in an airsoft game, as it allows the foam to maintain more flexibility. Unfortunately, I didn't realize how transparent red Plasti-Dip is, and I could still see the lines from when I traced my pattern. To fix this, I took the helmet back in and went over the seams again with Quick Seal. Unfortunately, Quick Seal is also fairly transparent when it's spread out. So I ended up using 3 coats of acrylic paint. 1 red layer, 1 white layer, and another red layer. Then I went over the whole helmet again with red Plasti-Dip to even everything out. After that, I taped off the helmet except for the back detail piece and gave it a coat of black Plasti-Dip. After painting was done, I went over the visible seam lines with an ultrafine Sharpie so that they were a little easier to see. Next, I was ready to fill the open spaces in the helmet. This is a knitting screen? Is that what it's called? I don't know, it was with the knitting stuff. Anyway, I lightly painted that silver to try and get it to look like worn, dirty metal. While that was drying, I cut some more black screen into the shape that I needed for it to fit behind the eyes of the helmet. Then I positioned the eye on the screen and taped it off. I used the patterns for the cheek and the side of the head to cut out pieces from the silver painted screen. Then I used hot glue to secure them inside the helmet. I started with 1 line of hot glue to keep the piece in place. Then I went over the edges of the screen, 1 layer on top and another layer beside. Next, I painted the eyes. All I did was a few light layers of flat white paint on the taped off screen. When I pulled the tape off, I had a pair of eyes that looked a lot like the comic book style I was aiming for. Then, I glued the eyes in the same way I glued in the other screen pieces using hot glue. Finally, I moved on to weathering. For this, I used silver rub and buff on a rag, and I lightly pass over any edges that are likely to be scraped. This helmet really only had those on the back piece, so I just added a few scratches here and there where I felt like some damage might occur. I tended to keep the scratches near some kind of edge, but I did put a few out in the middle, and used a big one down the back to cover up that tear from earlier. And now we have the completed Red Hood helmet. Now, I really like the way this helmet turned out, but even after resizing the pattern, it is too small for me. So I'm gonna have to make another helmet, and I'm gonna follow the same process that I did for this one, only I'm just gonna have to resize the pattern again. Once I'm done with that, I plan on selling the pattern for this helmet on my Etsy store. So check the link in the description and keep an eye out for that. If you enjoyed watching this video, check out some of my previous videos about this costume. I have one about the chest piece and another one covering the entire plan for this whole process. Be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see the rest of the Cosplay Airsoft Red Hood series. In the next video, I'm going to be stress testing the entire suit to make sure it'll function properly and work for what I'm wanting to put it up to. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.